Today's passage, which is from John's Gospel, chapter 17, beginning at verse 6, is quite a condensed, quite a rich passage. This is the prayer of Jesus prior to his arrest and then crucifixion, praying to the Father. This is, if you like, a conversation within the Trinity itself. Here, God the Son addresses God the Father in prayer. So what I thought I might do, rather than simply reading the passage out and then commenting on it as I normally do, because there's such a lot packed into it, I thought I might simply read a small chunk of the passage, make a comment, small comment, and then read the next chunk and so on. So I shall do just that. But the passage begins at John chapter 17 and verse 6. Jesus prayed, "I have manifested your name to the people whom you gave me out of the world. Yours they were, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word." Two things here. Notice that Jesus is keen that those who are listening to him, remember the disciples around him, Jesus is very keen that they know that the message that Jesus gives is God's message. He says, "I have manifested your name to the people." Now, in the Jewish thinking, the name sums up the character of a person. Names are very important in the Bible. You remember that Jesus renames Peter, for instance. You'll remember that God renames Abraham as Abraham. And the name of God, something which Moses asked for, is something which sums up God himself. I am who I am. God is simply being. He doesn't need anything else. He's not reliant on anything else. He is. Before all things were, he is. And Jesus has simply manifested that to the world, or rather to the people whom you gave me out of the world. So there is a strong connection between Father and Son. There's a strong connection between all that Jesus said and did and taught and God the Father himself. But this teaching note was to those whom Jesus has taken, or rather whom Jesus has been given, out of the world. The choice of who will listen to this is God's. Not everybody will listen. Not everybody will accept. God has chosen people and given them to Christ. We carry on. "Now they know that everything that you have given me is from you, for I have given them the words that you gave me, and they have received them and have come to know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me." This idea of Jesus being sent, we encountered back in the beginning of John's Gospel, John 3:16. God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that he gave his only begotten Son to us. And so this whole mission, if I can put it in those terms, of Jesus starts from the Father. It's the initiative of the Father, and he gives Jesus even the words to speak. So those who try and draw some line between the nasty Old Testament God, God the Father, and the nice cuddly New Testament God, Jesus, misunderstand things entirely. The very words that Jesus speaks come from the Father. You can't separate the two. God the Father is as loving as God the Son, and God the Son is as loving as God the Father. The words have their same origin. He carries on. "I am praying for them. I'm not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I am glorified in them. And I'm no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, keep them in your name, which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are one." So here, in this very personal prayer, we find a very deeply countercultural message. It's a dangerous thing to try and merge the world with the church. Jesus is distinguishing between the two here. Indeed, he says he's not praying for the world, but rather for those whom the Father has taken from the world and given to Christ. Now, we are members in the Church of England of a state church, but we mustn't confuse the state and the church. We are to minister to the state in which we are. We are to be salt and light, to be into the world in which we are set. We march to a different drum. Jesus carries on. While I was with them, I kept them in your name, which you have given me, and I have guarded them. And not one of them has been lost except the son of destruction, that the scripture might be fulfilled. So as Christ prays for his disciples, for this band of believers, Christ speaks of his care for them and his tending for them. The good shepherd, we might say, has guarded his sheep, and only one has been lost. And even that one was lost not because of a lack of care or any inadequacy of Jesus, but rather so that Scripture may be fulfilled. Jesus is to be betrayed, and to be betrayed you need a betrayer, and that dread task fell to Judas. And let's also notice that you can't separate God from his Scripture, that the Scripture might be fulfilled. Why? Because in this prayer of the Son to the Father, Scripture is brought to the fore. These are the words of God. The Bible, rather, is not simply a human document. It is divinely inspired, so that it is that the Scriptures have to be fulfilled. Why would God seek to fulfill a simply human and fallible writing? No, Jesus knows the Scriptures have to be fulfilled because they're more than simply human. He carries on. But now I am coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they are not of this world, just as I am not of the world. And so as Jesus prepares to return to the Father by means of the cross, his mind turns to the disciples who will be left behind, and he knows that they have the word of the Father, but he also knows that this word brings opposition. He knows that they will be persecuted as he has been persecuted. After all, we are Christians, Christians, so why would we expect to be treated any differently from Jesus? If Jesus was a man who is bringing such a radical message from God, well, we can see that those who carry that message on will also be persecuted as he was. And this section of the prayer ends with these words: I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified in truth. Now, given all this opposition, you may suspect that Jesus will be praying that they may be kept safe, his disciples, in some corner of the world, but not so. Jesus isn't praying that they'll be taken out of the world to a place of safety, but rather the mission of the church, of these disciples, is in the world, to bring God's words, thy word is truth, to the world. And so there is this sense that you have to be in the world to be any good to the world. It's like salt, this image of Christians being salt. It's not until you sprinkle the salt on the food and it mingles with the food that it preserves the food and adds flavour to the food. Well, there's a lot here to chew over, and there's a lot more that I could say. But these are some of the final words that Jesus gave to his disciples and his prayerful desire for those who follow him. And as you read them, be encouraged by them. Be encouraged that Jesus wants to seek you out and then send you out into the world around you. Be encouraged that as a society is increasingly secular in its attitudes and the church comes into conflict, be encouraged that this has always been the case, that this is the point. Rely on the words of God contained in the Scriptures, as Jesus did, and as he prayed, your word is truth. And be confident that God protects you from the evil one as well. That doesn't mean that you won't suffer, but it means God is with you and God does protect you. Christian, the Father has taken you from the world and has placed you in the secure hands of Christ. You will find no safer, no more secure place to dwell than that as you deliver the words of Christ to the society around you.